All right, we are moving on then to chapter 6, temptation, discontentment, and shame. Was it just me or was this long?
It seemed like it.
It seemed
Very
like
long.
longer than the others.
Yes.
So occasionally, I think that's just what we're going to get. We're going to get some that are a little shorter and a little longer. This one did seem a little longer, so I'm going to kind of get to it just because we've got more grounds to cover. I will simply say that we watched Christian pass out of the palace beautiful and battling Apollyon, the destroyer, and then the valley of the shadow of death, where he was kind of creeping along a precipice where the way was so narrow and there was calamity on either side, either slipping in one direction and getting stuck in the mire or down into the pits of hell itself. Once the sun came up, he could actually see where he was going, and it was much, much easier.
But he's still in the valley of death in chapter 6.
I
don't know.
And I think we're out of that now. I think we have now come out of the valley of the shadow of death. But he is kind of the way is now gone what seems to me to be a more open area. As a matter of fact, it says he starts to approach a little hill where he can see around him a little bit better. And the first thing he sees is a somebody. Faithful. His friend Faithful, who he seems to remember from the city of destruction. And so now he has got another traveling companion. He's had a few along the way. None of them have stuck around very long. Every one of them has turned tail at some point or turned out to not be a genuine companion, but somebody who was trying to lead him astray. Go to this other place, go to this other city, go see this other person. As a matter of fact, early on, they strike up a conversation and they both remember someone from their past. Who do they remember? Mr. Pliable. So we haven't heard from Pliable since he took off near the beginning. He didn't make it past the first swamp. Yeah, that first trouble spot was a swamp, the swamp of despair. And you remember he turned tail and went back home. So we actually get some feedback from Faithful. So in relation, let's just set the stage so we're all kind of on the same page. Who leaves the city of destruction first, Faithful or Christian? Christian does. Christian. And then after a period of time, Faithful finally leaves. Now, what does Faithful leave? He knows that the destruction is coming, and they get word like it's coming imminently. He's seen Christian leave, and he can give a report of the interim period after Christian has left until he left. Yeah, what are some of the things he mentioned?
He's seen Pliable leave and come back.
He saw Pliable come back. What happened to old Pliable, by the way?
He got made fun of, and
you got Pliable been made fun of. He's basically been ostracized. Yeah. Like even the people who don't like Christian, they have now also turned on Pliable because basically nobody likes a coward. And that's really what, his cowardice brings him back. And even if they would have supported him, like, yeah, you shouldn't go on a journey with Christian, you shouldn't go to the celestial city, you should stay here with us, it's sort of ruined because you're a coward. And, nobody respects that and nobody likes that. As a matter of fact, the Faithful basically says, I tried to talk to him once, I saw him in the street, and he kind of quickly crossed the street as though he couldn't see me because he was so ashamed.
He would back up for just 1 second.
Yeah.
There was one line, very second page. Okay. Faithful kept walking. I cannot stop. My life is in danger.
Yes.
Avenger of blood is behind me.
Aha.
Now, the Avenger of blood, in my recollection, was always somebody who whose family or whatever had been harmed and was out to get retribution.
Okay. Which makes sense to me.
Yeah, but they gave no further details.
No, they didn't even give a little scripture passage that we can look up. Because that one's, I caught that too,
It's Old Testament.
because I kind of, I was a little curious why Faithful was as, I'm not gonna say focused, but Christian's calling him, I can't turn around. He has to run to catch up. So the explanation was, I'm being chased by the Avenger of Blood, but we never see that.
Yeah.
And we never get anything further about that. So that I'm reading along with you guys. I'm not, like gone for, I can't tell you if he shows up in the next chapter or whatever. So I'm as confused as you are. An Avenger of Blood is, like you said, unless there's a scripture reference that I'm missing that we can relate it very specifically back to. I'm with you. It seems to be more of
Well, in the,
righteous vengeance.
in the old Hebrew law, righteous vengeance was if you
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the only thing I
hurt
can,
somebody,
what it makes me think of is two things. One that I'm pretty sure is not it, which is Moses being uncircumcised, and Zipporah, his wife, has to become the bridegroom of blood because he's basically like not doing what he said he was going to do. And then I'm also thinking about basically the kind of the angelic defenders of Eden after after Adam and Eve were cast out, and that after Abel is killed by Cain, even the ground cries out in vengeance for his blood. So I'm kind of thinking in these allegorical terms of, if not an angelic if not, I don't want to say hitman, but like an angelic vigilante, I guess, who is punishing humanity for their sins. Then it is just a broad general sense of him being chased by the consequences of his sins, whatever that means
and
in
that
an
makes
abstract,
all it.
in an abstract way. In the same way that Christian spent the first little while of his journey burdened by this backpack that he couldn't get rid of, and it was his sin, the burden of sin. Faithful never relates anything similar to that. So perhaps rather than feeling burdened, he felt chased. One person has consequences of their sin that maybe they experience a little differently than another. That's kind of the best I can come up with. Okay, so we get some background again on the city of destruction. We heard about Pliable. What could Faithful tell Christian about Christian's own reputation in the city after he left?
Well, they thought he was a fool.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of just sort of confirmed what Christian had probably suspected and what we already know, that people were making fun of him. They were also angry at him. So they basically treat Faithful the same way. And I want us to consider that combination very briefly. You're stupid and you're wrong for doing that, but how dare you? Like, you're stupid for leaving, how dare you leave? Not because of your stupidity, but you've heard about the crabs in a bucket. You can put crabs, like crabs in a bucket. And even though an individual crab can climb out, you can safely put all the crabs in there, because as one tries to climb out, the others grab them and pull them down. They sort of keep themselves in the bucket. They could escape if they wanted, but they don't let each other, because I'm not going to let you get, if I have to stay here, then you better stay with me. You're a fool for leaving, but you're not allowed to leave. That makes sense. Or good riddance. but you're not actually allowed to go. You know, the City of Destruction is Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out. At least they definitely don't want you to. So there's just that kind of funny juxtaposition there, I think. And there is an element, I believe, of mocking the Christian for their repentance and for their attempts at faithfulness and discipleship, but also hating them because you should be like the rest of us. What do you say? What do you think you're better than me?
Holier than thou.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. So anyway, now we actually, this is almost like getting two stories in one, because Bunyan has been watching Christian's journey and telling that to us within this narrative. Christian asks Faithful, well, hey, did you see this, what I saw? Did you go to this place that I went to? And Faithful's story is different. He kind of went to different places, and he definitely met different people. And so pretty long swath of this first part of the chapter is the uniqueness to Faithful's story. It's like a second rendering of Christian's journey, but you know, I walked through that door instead of that door. So what are some of the things that stuck out to you about Faithful's journey that was different?
He was tempted by a woman.
That was almost from the get-go.
Yeah.
So as I'm trying to remember without actually looking it up, when Christian got out of the swamp, he was like, his first major temptation after that, wasn't it going to that other city where he could get his burdens removed? He met somebody who talked up this other place, and he was supposed to go see like the law and like hypocrisy, or right? Am I remembering that right? So Faithful, that's not what he sees right out of the swamp. He sees a seductive woman. Why the difference? Why wouldn't two people walking on the exact same way face the same obstacles?
Well, we all try to walk the same way, and each one of us has faced different obstacles along the way. That's part of the Christian journey.
Difference in personality.
Difference in personality, right?
And experiences.
Different experiences, Sylvia?
And our own, it's our own failings that the temptations come from our own.
Right, the temptations come from our own failings that are kind of unique to us. What I struggle with is not necessarily what any of you struggle with, and vice versa. It could be because of my temperament. It could be because of the way I was raised. It could be because of who knows what factor, but there are things that I might struggle with doing roughly the same thing that somebody else does, but they struggle with something completely different. This is, while it's somewhat of a offhanded thing, I think this is an enormously significant concept. Whether or not it's treated such in the book, I think in general, we very easily judge others on a standard of ourselves, because that's the standard we know best.
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. Well, good for you. And there's stuff that we do that they wouldn't. They would never do such and such.
The things that you see in someone else that you think are bad.
Right.
Are wrong.
That we are typically bothered, annoyed, or frustrated in the behavior of someone else that we like the least about ourselves, whether we admit it or not. And I can testify that there are many ways that's true for me. So this is, I'm not trying to overshare here, but this is I don't know about true confessions. if clergy do something egregiously bad, what do you typically expect that egregiously bad thing to be?
Sexual sin.
Right. That's not my temptation. I got no interest. I mean, that is not something that tempts me personally to stray from, a chaste marriage and, that's not my, now, does that mean I am the perfect priest who will never sin and never fail? Absolutely not. It's just that one real big obvious one. God has spared me from having to fool with that. I've got my own junk. I've got the own things that I'm not good at, or that I try too hard with, or that I am tempted by, or that I mess up really badly, and it's just different. So I am not trying to excuse those clergy who fall with their sexual sin. I think it is egregiously bad for a variety of reasons. And it's some of the worst things that clergy can do, to be perfectly frank. I would rather a clergy person like steal from the plate than manipulate a vulnerable parishioner into an affair. 100%. Both are bad, but I also, within that sense of judgment, try to keep a there but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
It is a blessing that I have not deserved. I've done nothing to earn the fact that those are not my temptations. But I can be grateful that that's a whole swath of problems that God has seen fit to not have him face. Christian was never faced with this seductress. Would he have fallen? We have no idea. Maybe not. Maybe that's why he didn't face the seductress, because that wasn't going to be a problem. What did he face? He faced the law. He faced hypocrisy. He faced a lot of these internal issues of belief and behavior, whereas faithful these were a little more external, I think. Especially the seductive woman is like really kind of specific and precise. So whether that was something that he was uniquely tempted to, or Christian wasn't, or it's just however it plays out. So what do you recall what the in a nutshell what the seduction was?
I don't remember they ever listed what the seduction was.
She's like really beautiful, and she was trying to charm him, and right. So he would stray off the path, and he would follow her, and that would be to his destruction. What's another major temptation he faced? And this is, again, these are unique to him in comparison to Christian.
He was invited to go into business with Adam the First.
Adam the First has a proposition for him. I live in the biggest, best mansion in the world. You come work for me, and what will you get for this work? How will I pay you?
You inherit everything
You're going to inherit everything that I own, plus
His family.
What about his family?
You can marry the daughters.
I've got 3 daughters, and you can marry all of them at the same time. Are you seeing a pattern with Faithful's temptations?
Yes.
To me, that Faithful has a weakness here, and it is being preyed upon. Now, does Faithful succumb to this temptation? No. And when he says no, well, first of all, why does he say no? You remember? He has a realization about the underlying secret nature of this business relationship.
The old man has something written on his forehead.
Yes.
Yes, you're right.
Put off the old man with his deeds, it says.
And so if I go to work for this guy, it's going to turn out that I'm not actually working for him at all. I am his slave. And once I'm safely locked into that house, I will never be able to leave. So let's unpack that for okay. So he says no, and what's the guy's response?
He's angry.
Very angry, and I'm going to
Right,
send
right,
somebody. I'm going to send somebody after you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's unpack it for a little bit. Adam the First. Weird name, obviously for a reason. And the best mansion in the world, 3 daughters, and
Yeah.
I don't know what else was obviously allegorical about him. So let's see if we can't figure it out for a second. What can we take allegorically from this story?
He represents all the worldly possessions.
Yes. So first of all, who is Adam the First?
First man.
So I'm a little unclear because I'm just not a 16th century reformed thinker. If this is intended to be a literal Adam as in Adam and Eve, or a typographical, the first Adam, the first man, representing sinful humanity. You know, as Christ is the second Adam, he is juxtaposed against a specific person, but he's also juxtaposed against broken humanity in a generic and general sense. So to say Adam the First is clearly about broken humanity. Is it specifically Adam like Adam and Eve? I hope not, because that's, I don't connect the dots.
Just a representation.
I think so. Of like just carnal, worldly, like the top of worldly success. Biggest mansion in the world. Now, what else do we see?
Well, the town of deceit, that's pretty,
Right?
that's placing him exactly in as a liar, if you ask me.
Sure. So anything this guy says, you can't take at face value because you live in deceit. That's pretty ridiculous. Gosh, I'm looking for it because I want to see if there's anything else, any of those little specificities. Need that? Thank you for nothing.
That part where he grabbed him
Right.
and probably was gonna pull his arm off.
Right.
Yeah. So where are we? I think we're on 103.
102 and 103.
As I turned to leave, I felt him grab hold of my arm and pull me back with such deadly force. I thought he pulled my arm completely off. Oh, wretched man that but I escaped. Yeah, so perhaps the tug then of near deadly force is again speaking to the depth of temptation that this is, and the pull that such temptations can have on us, especially at the end. I don't know if this is directly related or not, but there's a concept in psychology. This is behavioral psychology, but I think it's just kind of a cool concept. And it might explain why a last gasp as you're leaving is so violent. So I'm assuming remember a little bit about behavioral psychology, about stimulus and response, like Pavlov ringing the bell and the dog salivating, or the sound of a doorbell makes us get up and answer it, or the sound of an alarm clock makes us turn it off. Or if you give a child a cookie for cleaning the room, they clean the room, right? So what happens though when you want to stop rewarding a behavior? Like okay, I don't want to do that anymore. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to, or I don't need them to do that anymore. You try to, the proper word is extinguish. You extinguish the behavior until the behavior becomes extinct. So for instance, like let's say every time your child brings you a flower, you give them a cookie. Oh, it's very sweet and that's nice. But then they don't stop, and they picked all of your flowers bare, and they're making a mess, like, oh, well, I mean, I gotta cut that out. So, you wanna get rid of that. If you've ever thrown a ball for a dog, and they bring it back, that's the stimulus response. You throw it, oh, they chase it and have fun, and then they bring it back, do it again. And every time you throw it, I mean, so you get tired of the game, right? And they keep bringing the ball back. So to extinguish the behavior, you try to disconnect the reward and the stimulus by you don't give them the reward anymore. So I'm not going to stimulate a response. So there is a phenomenon referred to as the extinction burst, which means there's confusion as to why the reward is not coming. And so they show the behavior aggressively multiple times, trying to make you do it. It's like the dog where they start like really shoving into you, like, no, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, because it's like something's wrong and I need to fix it. And it's not that this behavior needs to stop, it's that there's like a clog in the line that I need to clear out. And so you can see a behavior you're trying to get rid of when you stop rewarding it, a lot of the undesired behavior at the end before it finally goes away. So you're trying to walk away from sin, you're trying to walk away from destruction. And sometimes that's when it grabs you the hardest because it's desperate. I know they're walking out the door, and that's when I really try to yank the hardest, because if I don't, they really will be gone.
How about cookies?
Cookies?
Yeah, you're tempted by cookies, and you say, no, I'm not gonna eat that cookie.
Okay.
But silly cookie sits there and says, well,
Right? And the longer you look at it, the more I just gotta eat. You don't even want to eat 10.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's another one. The daughters of Adam the First. Adorable. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. So clearly, these are like these carnal natures. This is to say about Adam and humanity in this sense is to talk about the most carnal, almost animal-like aspects of human behavior. And remember, Faithful was a little tempted. He had, I was really thinking about it. And then he realized and saw the writing on the head and all that kind of stuff. So again, I think we're sort of seeing maybe where Faithful is struggling. Christian seems to struggle with his couple of things. I think he struggles with a sense of hypocrisy and with follow through. He says the right thing, but then he oversleeps, or he gets tempted and wanders off, or whatever. Faithful seems a little more like his risks are more carnal, and not just necessarily sexual, but like just the kind of the raw humanity, the appetites of the flesh. There was somebody else that he met that Christian did not. This is another. I'm sorry, say that.
He's not named. He doesn't have a name.
Was it discontent?
A man chased him and started beating on him.
Okay.
Oh, that one.
Yeah,
we have a couple. We have a couple of them. The man who beat him, and then there is discontent. That's the one I was thinking of. And where is discontent, by the way?
Page 104 on the bottom.
104 at the bottom.
Okay. And again, this is the valley of humiliation. Just like that's where who did Christian meet in the valley of humiliation?
What's his name?
That Christian meets Apollyon in the valley of humiliation. So who reminds Christian of all the terrible ways that he's failed. That's how Christian is supposedly to be humiliated. How is Faithful humiliated? Because he was going to lose all of his honor. He was going to go against the wishes of his friends. there's a couple of interesting things. There's people, the people that Christian doesn't meet: discontent, shame, and the unnamed man who beats him. So let's hit the unnamed man real quick. The unnamed man punches him until he's unconscious, and then he wakes up, and the unnamed man kicks him, and then the unnamed man just throws him around, whatever. And he keeps he knocks him out, and he keeps leaving him almost for dead. And when a faithful begs for mercy, what does the guy say?
I have no mercy.
Yeah, I don't even know mercy. Okay, so it's Christian who identifies the man.
Yeah.
Who's the man?
Moses.
It's Moses,
The lawgiver.
the lawgiver. So this is Moses as the embodiment of Torah, the law. So why is Moses beating him up?
Because he can't keep the law. He
He can't keep the law, but in particular, in this instance, like, why now? Why in this moment?
He had just failed with all of the temptations that he had.
He was very tempted by these last couple of things, including Adam the first. And remember, Adam the first said, I'm going to send somebody after you.
Yeah.
So in failing, he didn't completely beat his temptations, even though he didn't fully succumb to them. He has still broken the law. Might not be fully, might not be completely, but it was enough. And so here's the representation of the law as kind of basically a tool of destruction. That the law does not save, the law only condemns. The law has no mercy because the law is powerful. The law beats the crap out of poor faithful, but the law also cannot show mercy because it simply says what it says. So how is Christian saved? I mean, not Christian, how is faithful saved from the law?
Jesus comes and saves him.
That's right. A man came and saved me, and I think I noticed holes in his hands and feet. So it is Jesus. This is where his allegories get a little on the nose. Poor Moses gets a little short shrift here, being basically a bad guy. Remember that Jesus does, Jesus is not opposed to the law, he fulfills things.
Echoing Paul's writings.
Yeah. So we've got two other people: discontent and shame. And so Christian never sees either of these two. So again, maybe that says something about the difference between the two people, faithful and Christian. The difference is, the different things they struggle with, or the different things that they are perhaps tempted by. How is discontent a obstacle within our Christian discipleship?
Discontent means we're not satisfied with what God.
Not satisfied, right? And what's the problem with not being satisfied?
We want what somebody else had.
We want what somebody else has, or we want what we're not given. We're actually told to be content. And that contentness is not because you should just sort of suck it up, whatever's happening, or you just take it wherever you are. Why are we told to be content in our circumstances? Why would that be a godly thing to do?
Well, it calms you down.
In a practical sense, it is calming for sure.
And we know that God God has the best for us, even though we don't know what that is, so we have to
Yeah.
trust.
So basically, our discontent tends to bleed almost invariably into a lack of trust. You know, if I don't have it, maybe because God does not intend it. Well, that's not good enough for me. So I will fight and scratch and kick until I grab what I think I'm owed. It's also very restless. Discontent leads us in kind of two major ways, I think. It leads us always off towards something, and it might not be where we're supposed to go, but it also keeps us from being where we are. You cannot fully engage with where you are, where God has placed you, who He has put in your life, the opportunities that you've been given, if you're always thinking about what's next. Whether it's about climbing the ladder or looking for a better opportunity or whatever it is, we lose the ability not just to trust in God, but to also take seriously our walk of discipleship where He has currently placed us. In a similar manner that tomorrow has enough troubles for itself. Well, so live in the now sounds, very vague and fuzzy, but it is not ungodly. If anything, the Lord desires us to make these connections and foster them here and now with the people and in the places and in the times and the circumstances we find ourselves. We do very little good always imagining or always thinking about something or someplace else. To bloom where you're planted is not a scriptural quote, but I do believe it is a scriptural ethic.
Do you think that contentment is a gift that God gives us, or is it something that we grow ourselves with Him?
I think it can be a gift and a spiritual gift, but we are also encouraged to do it, to be content. So remember, we've had this now, because we are where we happen to be in our lectionary cycle as we're recording this, but we've had readings from the late chapters of Jeremiah the last few Sundays as our Old Testament reading. And one of the things, this past Sunday, it was the Sunday right before, where he says, God tells Jeremiah to proclaim to the people, establish roots where you are in Babylon.
Yeah.
Marry, have children, marry off your children, pray for the well-being of the city. No, it's not your forever home, and you will be restless in some regard, but because you are restless in some regard, don't let that blind you from where God has placed you in the here and in the now. So if Israelite slaves can be told to pray for the good of Babylon, their captors, then certainly we should be able to engage with wherever we happen to be at any given time. It might not be what we have put on our list of desires. But again, if God desires good for us and His plan is always for the good for us, then where we are right now must have some part in that.
Do you ever find yourself though, when you're, when things are bad, that, okay, I'm here because I deserve it. I deserve to be eating dirt right now.
Sure, absolutely. There are times where this is not pleasant, but it seems appropriate. And I don't think that would be precluded from this. If anything, I could probably turn that a little bit so it fits in the sense of sometimes you got to take a medicine.
Yeah.
And even in your bad circumstances, perhaps you need to go through them. Whether it is a consequence of something or whether it's in preparation for something else.
There's a big difference between preparation and the other.
May not feel like it though.
No, it might not. It might not. All right, now shame. This was an interesting take on shame because it's used kind of, in my mind, a little unusually. And then Christian actually uses shame in the more traditional sense a few pages later, but not talking about this guy. So I think it's worth considering shame for a second. We can look at what he did. So let's see if we can't find the page where shame is, because that's sort of an interesting one.
105.
105.
So because it goes for several pages.
Yep.
So let me say that what is the so shame in a general psychological sense is typically defined in terms of us perceiving the negative perceptions of others towards us. It's not an internal thing. It's what we think others think of us. They think badly of us. So shame is kind of corporate. It's sort of community-based. Shame is other people are looking down at me because of what I've done. Like I deserve it. I feel ashamed, but that's not it's not like a personal in quiet humiliation. It is the assumption, whether true or false, that other people are rightly looking down on you. That makes sense? So there's an external and a communal nature to shame. Now, I'm extrapolating here, but this makes sense to me. Based off of what we've already read a little through Faithful and where his specific struggles seem to be, there is probably no more effective tool of destruction within sexual sin than shame, because it encourages the person to internalize it, keep it secret, keep it silent, and not deal with it. And it gets worse, whether it is what you have committed or what has been committed against you. The shame has this nefarious power to keep what should be brought into the light and resolved deep in the darkness in order to fester and get worse. I don't even like to think about it, so I won't bring it up. Well, without bringing it up, how is it ever resolved? How is it ever forgiven? Like, I don't even want to confess it to receive forgiveness because I'm so ashamed. And again, we've got this sense of what we think of others thinking of us. So what did you take from the actual interaction that Faithful had with shame?
Well, I felt like it was so assaulting. Again, it was like these assaults that would not stop. It was an internal cutting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a battle.
He was comparing Faithful to other people, wise and powerful and people that you would frequently look up to
Yes.
and saying, you don't have it. They would never do that. Only a fool gives his money for like whatever, the church
Right.
or whatever.
It's not normal to become concerned over a few vices, which he called by different names because it made pilgrims a laughingstock to the educated and enlightened of the world.
Yep.
He then said that this type of thinking leads men to appreciate the poor and less fortunate simply because they belong to the same religious affiliation. Is this not shame? So I think the sort of shame that we see in here is what we might, and I don't want to be flippant, but this is almost the shame that's connected to peer pressure.
Mhm.
The sort of shame that this guy is bringing up is more like, you look stupid to the important people of this world.
Yeah.
The cool people, the smart people, the wise people don't do this stuff. Doesn't that make you feel bad? Don't you feel like a little weirdo? Don't you feel ostracized? Don't you feel like you're the freak? Because you are a freak. You need to stop being a freak and be like everybody else and be normal. This is not, what you're doing is not normal. Now,
But the temptation, to me, the temptation is that God's word instructs specifically otherwise.
okay,
And he's got to decide whether he wants to, which way he wants to go.
that's right. If by following God's word, you are separated out as different and strange to everyone else, are you willing to absorb the consequences?
Be strange.
And that's the sort of shame that I think this guy is. And the funny thing is, I don't think it's really, it's not so much shame as it is the specter of shame. He's trying to make faithful think of shame, but it's not actually shame itself. If I'm making any sense. And it just doesn't seem to work. I actually thought, and again, this is maybe just because this is an issue that I've had to think through before in the past many times. A more effective temptation of shame might have been more direct, rather than, don't you feel ashamed because like the smart people don't do what you do? Maybe more along the lines of what Christian faced, about being reminded of all the failings and then connecting it to how people think about you. And I'm not trying to rewrite Bunyan here, but to me, that's the sort of shame that would be really destructive. The sort of thing where, well, if people really knew what you were like. Because this is not that. This is, everybody can see what you're doing. Don't you feel weird? The real power of shame, I think, is in kind of diabolical secrecy. You know, hiding yourself, hiding your sin, hiding something about something you regret or whatever. And maybe that was too similar to Christians' temptations, and that's why Bunyan wanted to kind of make faithful's journey a little more unique. But in my mind, the destructive shame that we might have to battle within our own Christian walk on the way is more about that pressure to keep things wrongly secret because you don't want to feel the shame and scorn of others. If people really knew what I did, if people really knew what I was like, and so then hide yourself. That's appropriate. And then all these things that he's done, he doesn't find forgiveness. He doesn't receive grace. He can't be a positive example. He sinks deeper into that darkness that he was trying to hide that secret shame in. And maybe that's also a timely thing or a cultural thing that in the 16th century, they were dealing with maybe different stuff than we're dealing with now, because I think the pressure of this negative pressure of shame today, at least, is very powerful. And, you know, the rise of social media has only intensified that, because there is a pressure to show the world great things and to absolutely hide anything negative. And if you show something negative, you're going to be jumped on. It has resulted in what I believe is a really regrettable, but it seems like it's everywhere, where those in positions of authority or leadership seem to so rarely say, yep, I made a mistake on that one. Or, no, things aren't going well. It's under my watch, under my responsibility, and it's just not going well. I mean, you can always say, I want to fix it, or please forgive me, or whatever, but it's like, how many times do we hear that from, pick an organization, pick a group, pick whatever, and look at the top and see when things are clearly not going well, how what you get out of it is spin and justification, and not, I did wrong. Why? And I think that's shame.
But when people do it, when they get them, then there's always that group that says, oh yeah, holier than thou.
Or we're going to destroy you.
Yeah.
So we also live in this weird tension with cancel culture and stuff, where if you admit to wrongdoing,
Yeah.
well, then you should get fired from your job. You should be
Yeah.
hounded and never get another job. You should be chased in the streets, and people should post ugly things about you because you are now the lowest of the low and unfit for polite society. So there's a weird kind of balance in there. And I'm not saying that there's not a reason for people on the top to like deflect. I'm just saying I wish it weren't so. It's like, why can't you just say the sky is blue and the grass is green? You know, things aren't going well. It's okay, you know. We all have those times where things don't go well, and we miss something really important when we can't be honest with each other, whether you're a big deal or not. But we can't be honest with each other. And by and large, when we're not honest with each other, we can't fix problems.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, just say it's not going well and we'll try something else. I'll help you. Anyway, that's my rant. So these are all very, I think, interesting, like counters to not counters, but it is sort of contrapuntal to Christian's walk. So in music theory, counterpoint are basically two independent melodic lines that go over each other and aren't intended on their face to relate, but they actually have a very complex undercurrent that does. You know, like say the works of Bach and his fugues, where you've got a melodic line and then something else that overlay, but it's in the interplay where these seemingly disconnected lines actually have this beautiful depth and complexity. So here, on the exact same way, these two pilgrims have faced different obstacles, but those melodic lines, we can kind of mesh them, and we can kind of get some complexity and depth out of seeing the interplay of the two happening. Because there were times where I think, like, here we're walking, and one's here, and then they swap places, I think, on a few occasions, and one gets ahead of the other. Like, poor Faithful never makes it into the palace. He doesn't get the armor. He doesn't get to see all these wonderful things, but he's actually getting further on his path.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's this kind of come and
Well,
go.
those were lessons he didn't need.
Or he didn't need those lessons, and Christian did. Yeah. Okay. We've got two sections, one long one, one very short one. But even the long one, I don't really know what to say. What do you say about talkative? Talkative. They meet,
Oh,
yet a third pilgrim. Talkative. So
Again,
somebody tell me
Faithful
about
doesn't know him, but Christian does.
Christian knows him, Faithful doesn't. So what's Christian's response
Knows
to
his
talking?
family.
He's like, he's all talk, no action.
He's all talk and no action, but Faithful doesn't know that. Here's another guy who's saying all the right things. This is great. This is going to be so much. Hey, now we're a trio. Isn't this awesome? And Christian just kind of like quietly not saying a word. The talkative and Faithful really hit it off, and they're just talking. And has talkative said anything wrong initially?
No.
No, not really. And even when he says something that Faithful corrects, what does talkative do to the correction?
Builds on that.
He agrees. Oh yeah, you're right. I just didn't get to that point yet. So Faithful is super happy, and he wants to go talk to Christian, like, isn't this great? Now there's three of us and we can all hang out together. And Christian's point is what?
He pulls him aside and
Yeah.
says, listen, he's just talking, but he doesn't.
He's nothing but hot air. I know this guy.
Okay.
I
He's
know
got a
this.
bad reputation, that's what he said.
He's got a bad reputation. He also came from the city of destruction. He was in my part of town and not your part of town.
Mhm.
This is what I know about him. So what about that reputation is so bad?
He's not a doer.
He is not a doer. As a matter of fact, not only does he say things and not follow through, it seems that he does a lot of the opposite. He has a miserable household where he mistreats people. People who know him from the city know him for his bad behavior and his bad attitude. So
At home in private.
in private, he's very different than this public persona, but apparently it's so obvious and it's happened in so many occasions that everybody seems to pretty much know.
Yeah.
So can we relate that in a contemporary setting? You ever met anybody like that?
Yeah, it's almost like the Christian who says, I'm a Christian, but they're not. By their actions, by their fruit, you see that they're not.
That's right. And we get a lot of kind of theological stuff behind this with, by your fruit you will know them, and the time of judgment, and, I never knew you. So we also know, I think, a lot of unfortunate examples, and we have perhaps been those unfortunate examples at times of people who say the right thing and do the opposite. We actually were talking about this last night at vestry in our Bible study from 1 Thessalonians. When you talk to wait staff, it's kind of an aphorism within the industry that the worst time to work in the restaurant is early Sunday afternoon. Why? Because all the church folks coming for lunch. It's the most complaints, the most trouble, and the smallest tips.
Getting out of the parking lot.
Getting out of the park, cutting people off, right? And that is to our shame. And even if it's not one of us, we all get lumped in because it does happen so often. You see somebody with an ichthus fish on their back bumper, and they're honking at people and flipping them off in traffic. And it just seems like, that's worse than not having the ichthus fish on your car. And we all sin and we all fall short, but there is that sort of special hypocrisy of being so verbally effusive about the right thing, but then your behavior is so antithetical to all of that. And so Christian basically says you need to, don't listen to this guy at all. Faithful believes him. I've got no reason to distrust you. So how are they going to get rid of him? What's the plan? They basically say, he wants to talk about anything and everything. Okay, get into a conversation about like words and deeds, about your fruit and actions, and just keep at it. He's going to get so ticked off that he's going to leave. He will leave on his own. And so Faithful does this. And how does that conversation go?
Exactly. His plan.
Exactly the way that Christian said it would. Talkative starts getting less talkative. He becomes kind of taciturn, and then he becomes annoyed, and then he's angry. All at the repeated insistence that our words must be manifest through our actions. This is, very much faith without works is dead. This is very much the old, the old difference between hearing and listening. When your mom says, go clean your room, your eardrum vibrates and the little bones in your ear send electrochemical signals to your brain, but you don't actually do it. So we might describe that as you heard her, but you didn't listen, because listen has an implication of doing what you were told. That there's a response to hearing that fulfills it into listening. So Do not be hearers of the word only, you must be doers of the word. If you love me, Jesus says, you will keep my commandments. There is an invariable and an unescapable consequence to our behavior, to our actions, to our words through our faith. It is never simply intellectual assent or a verbal response. The prayer book, I think, does a very beautiful job of taking the repent and be baptized and formalizing it in the baptismal covenant and service to lay it out of the interior and exterior requirements of true repentance. That we're asked these questions in the prayer book baptism service. And the first questions are all about, do you believe? Do you believe? Do you believe? And then the next set of questions are, will you do? Will you do? Will you do?
Yeah.
And there is the sacramental nature of the inward and visible sign, of an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. It's both parts, not either or, but both and. True religion is this, about the widows and the orphans. It's about what we are doing with what we know. And because talkative won't actually do anything, they are almost worse than empty words. Why could they be worse than empty words?
Lead other people astray.
Because he has caused people to stumble. And that's going to reference specifically, Christian says, back in town, he caused people to stumble. So it's not just blah, 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 that we can let go in one ear, not the other. He actually made it worse for others to make it on the path because of how he acted. Anything else about talkative? It was like a whole section, but it was, I thought, kind of repetitive. Because that's our last section. They meet one last person. Who do they meet?
Evangelist.
Evangelist. And they both know Evangelist. They both consider him a friend. Evangelist was independently of each other, but both put them on the path to the wicket gate and basically on the way to the celestial city. And they're both overjoyed, and Evangelist is real happy, and everybody's real happy. But Evangelist kind of has a warning. And it's what I assume is going to happen next chapter.
Yep.
What is Evangelist preparing them for?
Coming problems.
There will be even more problems. They've already been through pretty fair amount. And he basically says it's going to get worse.
You're supposed to be caring.
It's interesting.
And it's within yourself.
Within yourself. Okay.
And it's interesting, he said, above all, pay attention to your own hearts and to the lusts inside you, for they are deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. And it's funny because they've gone through a lot of that stuff.
A lot of their struggles have been internal, right? If you do not become weary of the Christian life, hold on to the end. The crown is in front of you, and it's one that will last forever. Run away, you will obtain it. These are all basically scriptural references. Some have set out for the crown after they've traveled. They take steps away. Don't do that. Hold on, and do not let any man take your crown. You are not yet out of the gunshot range of the devil.
Mhm.
You have not resisted to the point of shedding blood.
Right.
And he says one of you, isn't that where he says?
Yeah, he said one will die.
One of you's gonna die, or maybe both.
So there is something, they're going to this next place, and he implies pretty heavily, one of you will die. Now, is that failure?
No.
No. As a matter of fact, he says the one who dies is actually going to jump to the end, and you're going to make it to the celestial city before the other one. I can't help but be reminded about Paul saying, I wish that I were away from the body, because be away from the body to be with the Lord. However, so, one of them, well, this is not about succumbing to temptation, but this is going to be about, the mortal danger in life of Christian discipleship. And I think he implies pretty heavily that one of them will be killed. One of them will here's the shedding of the blood part of it, and their mortal life will come to a conclusion. That is not a sorrowful tragedy. That does not preclude them from making it. As a matter of fact, even in their pain and suffering, they will actually, they will make it first. I'll take the high road and you take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before you. That's talking about, I'm going to travel physically, or you are going to travel physically, and I'm going to die. We'll both be back in the promised land, but I won't make it to see with my own two eyes. I will, in heaven, I will return home. The high road and the low road being our earthly journey, and the high road being our death and our reception into the heavenly kingdom. So it's basically saying, one of you will, in these coming tribulations, one will die. That is not the end, but I'm preparing you for this eventuality. So if you had to guess who's going to die, I'm assuming it's faithful, because it's all about Christians so far. And it makes sense to me that faithful, let's just say if this were a movie, faithful would mention, it's just 2 days before retirement. And you kind of know that the bullet's coming.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see it. I can't wait till I get home to my girl. You're like, you hear that in a war movie? Like he pulls out, the one recruit pulls out a picture of his girl and starts talking about when he gets home, like everybody else sort of shifts away. Like, cause he's dead next. So I have a feeling that faithful will remain faithful, but he'll be faithful unto death. Just a guess. I haven't read it. So we'll see. Anything else? All right.